Duane Zoscin. I am the Digital Traffic Manager for Beyond.com. I run many of the new user acquisition channels, including the affiliate marketing program. I also do research and development into new traffic channels. I spent the last 20 or so years of my career in various marketing and leadership positions, including product development. And some of the ideas that I want to share with you today are, I guess, the ideas that I use when I'm exploring new traffic channels. As I was preparing for this session, I gave a lot of thought to how I would frame the context of the material that I wanted to share. So I decided that one of the best ways to do that would be to let you in on some of the working titles I had along the way. Shining a light on the dark side of marketing. Mining for gold on the seamy underbelly of the internet. Identifying good ideas with bad origins. But then I thought better of that. I thought that I really wanted the material to be more senior to graduate level. But it all comes down to this. Finding those viable marketing tactics in the places that you're least likely to look, and then finding a way to use them in our legitimate business practices. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean. Back in the mid to late 90s, email marketing was the domain of the spammer. Up here I have an example of what email marketing used to look like in the bad old days. Here's somebody offering me something for nothing. They're trying to take advantage of my trusting nature. And at the end of the day, they're not really offering anything of value. And clearly you can see there's no opt-out information. This is really the hallmark of email spam being used in its shadiest way. So let's fast forward to 2013. Here's Hallmark, an internationally recognized brand, and they're using email marketing the right way. The Can-Spam Act is now in place. The ISPs monitor email behaviors. Legitimate advertisers use opt-in and double opt-in as standard business practice. Email marketing is now a legitimate mainstream marketing practice. The company I work for, Beyond.com, basically runs on email marketing, as do, I'm sure, many of yours. I'll give you another example of a tactic being used in a kind of unsavory way. This is a drug deal in action. And how do drug dealers get their first-time users hooked? Well, one tactic they use is they give away their first dose or their first couple of doses for free. Then once the user gets hooked or addicted, and they decide that they can't live without the product anymore, the dealer knows he can start charging them for it again and again. Now, who else does this? Just about every software as a service brand. And now it's a legitimate business practice. Give the customer something that has a high perceived value for free. Let them get used to it. Let them get so used to it that they decide that they can't live without it. And then you could start charging them for it again and again. So my point here is, and the point of the whole session really, is to separate the tactic from the tactician and really dispassionately analyze what's good and useful when you come across these internet scams. The perpetrators of these scams, they're shady, they're manipulative, they're evil, scheming, they're all these bad things. But they can also be very clever and very frugal. They want to get the most sales or the most victims as quickly and as cheaply as they can. And isn't that what we want? More sales quickly and cheaply? So again, just because the tactician is evil doesn't necessarily mean the tactics are bad. So let's dig in. I have 5 basic steps that I use to mine for and evaluate ideas that I find on the internet. Number 1, know your line in the sand. Know your own moral and legal comfort zone. For the online criminals, they find themselves to the far left of this line. They don't care if it's legal or not. They're going to do it if it makes them money as long as they don't get caught. For some, their personal comfort zone is anything as long as it's legal. It can still be evil, but as long as there's no jail time involved, they're probably going to do it for money. Now the next one over, sorry about that. The next one over is a little bit of a gray area. It's not evil, it's still legal, it just doesn't help anyone. Now, I'm not here to judge any business who conducts business this way. The point of this exercise is to really decide for yourself where your own personal line is, because that's the benchmark you're going to use for evaluating the ideas that you find. Most legitimate businesses find themselves to the right of this line. I'm only going to do something if it adds value, or I'm only going to do something if it adds value and enhances my brand. Beyond.com, for example, we find ourselves to the right of that line, and we expect our business partners to be in alignment with us. So let's run down step 2. Where do I prospect for the ideas? I visit blackhatworld.com a lot. Now, many of the ideas I find here are very mainstream. Many of them are unevolved, but some of them are blatantly scams. Those are the ones that really catch my eye. Those are the ones I want to investigate a little bit further. I read my spam for the same reason. I try to find the people who are trying to take advantage of me. I'll open their offer in a private browser session, and I'll follow it on down that rabbit hole, just so I could try to reverse engineer what they're trying to do. Watch your social media. Now, a little while ago, there was a lot of Facebook apps that would access your friends list, post on your behalf to your friends. Now, I see that a lot less often, but it must have been working for somebody, because at one point it was all over Facebook. Most of the ads that you'll see on Facebook are going to be very legitimate, very mainstream, but keep your eye open for the things that kind of break that pattern, that are a little shady. Those are the ones that you want to investigate a little bit further. Visit Craigslist, especially the small business ads. Actually, the service section in general, because those are the free ads, and scammers love free advertising, just like the rest of us. What you're looking for when you get here are the small biz ads. The BizOp ads. Again, you're going to find a lot of mainstream stuff, a lot of same old kind of stuff, but once you start to read them a lot, you'll start to recognize the pattern, and then you'll recognize those things that break out of the pattern, that are a little bit shady, that you want to dig into a little bit further. So I found this idea on Black Hat World. It's a 3-step money-making scheme. Number 1, go create an Instagram account. 2, head on over to Fiverr and buy 35,000 fake followers, and then head on over to eBay and sell that community. Seems simple enough, which leads me to step 3. Figure out what's probably working. Now, one of the great indicators of something working or something not working is if you see it happening in the real world. So I headed over to eBay with the Instagram idea in mind, and lo and behold, here are some eBay auctions of people selling Instagram accounts. Some of them even have bids. So I get the strong feeling that this Instagram idea was working for our Black Hat friend. The problem with Black Hat World is you find that many of the ideas have already passed their heyday and they just don't work anymore. I was lucky enough to catch this one just at the tail end of it when it's still probably working for somebody. That's why you have to be looking in all those different areas that I mentioned as well, just so that you recognize the patterns and you recognize the things that break out of the pattern. So let's go back to our example. Our Black Hatter here created a fake social media community, one which apparently has a high perceived value, invested very little, then he sold it for a profit. Now, the reason why this one caught my attention was because of the concept of perceived value exceeding the investment that he made. To me, this is a clue that there may be a way to make this legitimate. After all, isn't that what all legitimate businesses do? You have to sell things for more than you invest in them, and one of the only tools you have at your disposal to make that happen is perceived value. So let's move on to evaluating this idea. I already had a good idea what could be right about this idea, so the next step is really to kind of dispassionately break down what's wrong with it. The first question I ask is, are they cheating or doing something illegal? So when you look at it, it's not illegal to open an Instagram account. It's not illegal to buy a gig on Fiverr, and it's certainly not illegal to post something for sale on eBay. Now, it could be argued that if you're stating you have X number of followers, that those are real followers. So I think legally you're kind of right on the line here. But next, are they cheating? I took the time to review the Instagram terms of service, and right there in chapter 3, it says plain as day, you agree not to sell or transfer your Instagram account. It went on to say, with the exception of people or businesses who are expressly authorized to create accounts on behalf of their employers or clients. But clearly, this idea, the way it's presented, breaks the rules, which means from a legitimate business standpoint, it's probably not going to be sustainable. Next, are they failing to add value? Well, of course they are. It's all fake. It's a house of cards. The difference between legitimately selling on perceived value and this is that there's usually some intrinsic value involved. This has absolutely no intrinsic value. And then finally, if I can get this into my comfort zone, can I use it in my business? Can I even get it into my comfort zone? Can I do it without cheating? Can I add value? Which brings me to morphing the idea into legitimacy. So when I started to analyze this idea, two things stuck out at me. Number one was it has no intrinsic value, and number two, it cheated. So how far away from legitimate does that really make it? Remember what the terms of Instagram said, with the exception of people or businesses that are expressly authorized to create accounts on behalf of their employers or clients. So if I created a social media community on behalf of a client, I'm not breaking that rule anymore. So now I'm just down to one rule. How do I add intrinsic value? So I went on to ask myself, for whom would a large, engaged social media community have value? Now, hypothetically, if I were a startup company trying to make my first or second sale, I'd want to look a little bit bigger and more established than I am. So would a large social media community help me to do that? Probably. Would a large, engaged social media community help me to do that? I'd say almost definitely. So I headed over to Facebook with my research and development hat on, and the goal here was just to see how easy or how hard is it really to build an engaged community of users, passionate users. I used the Facebook advertising tool. I optimized based on like. They've got really robust targeting options. So it's actually fairly easy to do this. I mean, I know I did my page here on cats, and this is you know, iconically the low-hanging fruit of the internet. But the principles are the same. You know, if you could find something about the startup that people are passionate about and use the targeting tool in the right way, you could literally buy a community of engaged users. And you know, and this can be RCS. This can be real company shit like Will Reynolds mentioned in the keynote. You know, this is an engaged community. They're passionate about this. This is the place where they're passionate. I don't even add content to this anymore. The users add the content for me. That's how passionate they are. So going back to the hypothetical example, if I were an agency trying to build a social media community on behalf of a startup, I'd try to figure out where people can be passionate about that startup. I could go over to Facebook, buy the community for them of engaged users, and you know, make them look a little bit bigger and more established than they are. So if I did this, would I be doing anything wrong? I don't think so. These are real followers. These are real people who comment, like, share. They're engaged. They're passionate. But let's push the envelope a little bit. What if I did this on behalf of my client? I built a smaller engaged community by purchasing them on Facebook, but then I supplemented it with another 95,000 fake users from Fiverr. I'm still reaching my clients' goals of helping them look larger than they are, providing intrinsic value, but it's a little deceptive to the user, isn't it? Now, am I doing anything wrong? I'm not going to answer that question for you. If you had done step one, you already know what your comfort zone is. You know where your line in the sand is, and you already know if this is going to be right or wrong for you and your company. So just to briefly review, I took this Instagram idea that basically creates perceived value out of thin air and sells a useless social media community to an unwitting victim. I found the good in it, I minimized the bad, And at this point, for the right market situation, I found an idea that will probably sell and stay within my comfort zone. So let's run down those steps one more time. Define your comfort zone. Know your line in the sand. You're going to be walking through some very dark areas of the internet. I suggest you don't go there without your moral compass. Prospect for ideas. Go ahead and take that walk on the dark side. Read your spam. Look at Craigslist. Read Black Hat World. Figure out what's probably working. Take those ideas that you find on Black Hat World and other areas and see if they're actually out there in the real world. See if people are actually selling this stuff or making money. Evaluate the idea. Here's where you have to really dispassionately break down what's wrong with an idea, what's right with an idea, separate the tactic from the tactician. And then finally, morph that idea into something you could use and test, test, test. Remember, it's all about separating the tactic from the tactician and not being afraid to explore some of those darker areas of the internet. Today's mainstream marketing ideas, they often start on the fringe as scams. That tells me that tomorrow's mainstream marketing tactics are probably hidden somewhere inside of today's scams. So don't be afraid to look for them. How am I doing? I might have about a minute left if anyone has a question. Okay, well, thank you all for coming.